On this vote, the yeas are 407, the nays are 0, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the motion to concur in the Senate amendment on H.R. 5009 with an amendment offered by the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Rogers, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Mr. Rogers of Alabama moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment to the bill H.R. 5009 with an amendment consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 118-52.
The question is on agreeing to the motion to concur. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 281 and the nays are 140. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
The House will be in order. Am I on? The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a concurrent resolution and ask unanimous consent for its immediate consideration in the House.
The gentleman will suspend. The House will be in order. The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 134, concurrent resolution directing the Clerk of the House of Representatives to make a correction in the enrollment of the bill H.R. 5009.
Is there objection to the consideration of the concurrent resolution? Without objection, the concurrent resolution is agreed to, and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the proceedings during the former member program be printed in the congressional record and that all members and former members who spoke during the proceedings have the privilege of revising and extending their remarks.
Without objection. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection, the chair lays before the House a message.
To the Congress of the United States, Section 202D of the National Emergency Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless within 90 days prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with this provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice stating that the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13818 of December 20th, 2017 is to continue in effect beyond December 20th, 2024. The prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside the United States continue to threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. Human rights abuse and corruption undermine the values that form an essential foundation of stable, secure, and functioning societies, have devastating impacts on individuals, weaken democratic institutions, degrade the rule of law, perpetuate violent conflicts, facilitate the activities of dangerous persons, undermine economic markets, and continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. Therefore, I have determined that it is necessary to continue the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13818 with respect to serious human rights abuse and corruption. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., the White House, December 11, 2024.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs and ordered printed. The chair lays before House a message.
To the Congress of the United States, Section 202D of the National Emergency Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless, within 90 days prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with this provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice stating that the national emergency with respect to global illicit drug trafficking declared in Executive Order 14059 of December 15, 2021 is to continue in effect beyond December 15, 2024. The trafficking into the United States of illicit drugs, including fentanyl and other synthetic opioids, is causing the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans annually, as well as countless more non-fatal overdoses with their own tragic human toil. Drug cartels, transnational criminal organizations, and their facilitators are their primary sources of illicit drugs and precursor chemicals that fuel the current opioid epidemic, as well as drug-related violence that harms our communities. International drug trafficking, including the illicit production, global sale, and widespread distribution of illegal drugs, the rise of extremely potent drugs such as fentanyl and other synthetic opioids, as well as the growing role of internet-based drug sales continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. Therefore, I have determined that it is necessary to continue the national emergency declared in Executive Order 14059 with respect to global illicit drug trafficking. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., the White House, December 11, 2024.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs and ordered printed. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, sir, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on December 11, 2024 at 1:00 p.m. that the Senate agreed to Senate Concurrent Resolution 43, that the Senate passed Senate 4776, that the Senate agree to relative to the death of the Honorable Fred R. Harris, former United States Senator from the state of Oklahoma, Senate Resolution 925, that the Senate pass without amendment H.R. 1097, H.R. 3254, H.R. 3797, H.R. 3801, H.R. 6829, H.R. 6960, H.R. 7872. Signed sincerely, Kevin F. McCumber, Acting Clerk.
Refer to on 4 and like that. Okay. The House will be in order. The chair respectfully requests that the members take their conversations outside. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Arkansas is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the life of renowned Arkansas Democrat-Gazette sports reporter Bob Holt, who passed away Wednesday, December 4th, after collapsing following the Arkansas football game against the Missouri Tigers, his alma mater. Since 1981, Bob covered the Razorbacks and sports across Arkansas, bringing every game to life in the unique way that only Bob Holt could. He was a titan of the media industry, revered for his ability to get an answer to any question, all while maintaining the utmost respect from coaches, players, and his fellow reporters. Bob leaves a resounding legacy in his wake, and his mark in the Arkansas sports community will go down in history. Not only was Bob an unparalleled reporter, he was a faithful and loyal friend. Matt Jones, a friend and colleague of Bob's for many years, said, "If the world was full of Bob Holtz, it would be a lot better world, a lot kinder world, a lot more peaceful world. It would be a world that laughs a lot more, and it would be a much, much better place." My prayers go out to his family, friends, and all Arkansans mourning our loss. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, for millions of our fellow Americans, Thanksgiving is about returning home, a time to gather with loved ones in a place both familiar and safe. On my way back to Hawaii for the Thanksgiving recess, with long delays and packed airports and planes, it hit me. For too many of our Maui ohana, this is but a sliver of what they have been trying to do for the past 16 months. They're just trying to go home. A week before Thanksgiving, I joined the Folau Mo'aloa Ohana as they became the first family to move into the new Kilohana temporary group housing site in Lahaina. By this spring, 167 modular units will house survivors and their families. While these housing units can never replace what was lost, we hope they will soon be made homes by the people, the love, the hopes and dreams that will fill the space between these walls. A big mahalo to FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the State of Hawaii, Maui County, and all our contractors and community partners for their hard work and dedication. Thanks to them, families like the Folau Moeloas are moving in months ahead of schedule to a place where they can look ahead to the future and to what this community will one day be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the Avon Marching Band and the Gold Schools Marching Band, who won both the 24 Bands of America Grand National Championship and the ISSMA State Finals for the second year in a row. Avon High School's Marching Band also won all 3 special award categories at the 2024 Bands of America Championship, taking home the awards for Outstanding Music Performance, Outstanding Visual Performance, and Outstanding General Effect Performance. I want to congratulate the students on the 2 big wins this year, and I'm proud of their outstanding talent, perseverance that has led to their continued successes and national dominance. I also want to thank the parents, teachers, directors, and volunteers for their hard work and dedication to this program. They couldn't have done it without you. Congratulations again to the Avon Marching Black and Gold, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today the House passed the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025. I voted for the legislation as this body upholds again the over 60-year bipartisan tradition ensuring partisan politics does not put America's national security at risk. As a senior member of the Defense Appropriations Committee, I greatly appreciate the bipartisan work of the Defense Authorizing Committee. Their collaboration has resulted in a bill that supports our patriotic service members at home and abroad. And the legislation meets that call through its 14.5% pay raise for junior enlisted service members and a 4.5% increase for all other members of our military. Our state of Ohio is home to over 31,000 service members, including those on active duty, reserve, and National Guard duty. They have earned this much-needed increase in pay at a time when too many of our citizens are struggling to afford basic needs. This legislation also authorizes $121 million for defense-related upgrades in Ohio to further strengthen avenues of collaboration between the Department of Defense and Ohio's installations. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Kwanzaa to our dear service members who are serving liberty at home and abroad. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purposes does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I rise today to congratulate the 2024 SEC champions, my MBA alma mater, the University of Georgia Bulldogs. During a thrilling overtime game last Saturday, the Dogs defeated the University of Texas Longhorns 22-19. This exciting win marks the 15th time the University of Georgia will bring home the SEC championship trophy to Athens. Congratulations to all the talented young men who put their everything into the game, but especially to the 9th District's own quarterback, Gunnar Stockton from Rabun County, who came off the bench to help lead the Georgia Bulldogs to victory. I also want to recognize the other incredibly talented Dogs from Georgia's 9th District who helped clinch another SEC title. Well done to Buford's KJ Bolden, Jake Pope, and Merrick Briley, as well as to Gainesville's own Dan Jackson. Congratulations to the entire University of Georgia football team and coaching staff, led by the legendary coach, Kirby Smart. Go Dogs, let's bring home another national championship. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I strongly support Barton College's initiative to construct a new health sciences building on their Wilson campus. The initial funding phase is estimated at $19 million, and it will be a wonderful investment. It is essential to ensure a more robust talent pipeline for North Carolina's healthcare industry. Given the health disparities across Eastern North Carolina, Barton College aims to ensure a brighter future for our state's healthcare system and the residents who rely on it daily for their mental and physical well-being. A new health sciences building will provide additional labs, research space, and improved technology for students, which will yield huge dividends for Wilson County and Eastern North Carolina. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from West Virginia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor my good friend, Delegate Eric Householder, as he retires from the West Virginia House of Delegates after 14 years of service. For the last 2 years, he has served as the House Majority Leader and previously chaired the House Finance Committee. As a small business owner, Eric ran for elected office to fight back against the job-crushing regulations coming out of Charleston and reform our tax code. With the help of Eric's leadership, West Virginians have less regulation, lower taxes, and educational freedom. I'm proud to bestow upon Delegate Householder my Congressional Patriot Award for excellence, leadership, volunteerism, and selflessness, virtues without which our republic cannot thrive. While his time in the House of Delegates has come to an end, I know that Delegate Householder is not done serving our state. I thank Delegate Householder for his years of service and his tireless efforts to improve the lives of West Virginians. I wish him all the best in his future endeavors, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize some of the 637,000 millennials who make up 28% of Houston's population. These remarkable individuals are reshaping our city through the innovation, leadership, and commitment to excellence. Leaders like Danielle Keys-Best, a dynamic force in real estate and public service. She has elevated our community through her work with campaigns, organizations like Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated, and the Houston Black Real Estate Association. In construction, Julian Paul Johnson Jr., Vice President at Skilled Construction, exemplifies progress with his dedication to process improvement and his recognition as a 2019 Urban Land Institute Young Leader. We also have individuals like Jose Torre, a construction entrepreneur, and Emily Anasi, an immigrant excelling at logistics. They remind us of the diverse talents driving our city and our nation forward. I like to celebrate legal powerhouse Bianca Calderon de la Chica, whose advocacy dominates Houston's highways, and Alva Catan, an entrepreneur redefining success. Finally, I recognize Uzar Hassan, owner of Millennial Magazine, who highlights Houston's creativity and our future. Together, these individuals demonstrate that America's largest generation is ready to take up the mantle. As an ex-centennial, I recognize their achievement and encourage their future to make our community a better place to live, work, and play. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Seeking unanimous consent to address the House 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The National Defense Authorization Act takes an important step to protect children from harmful and irreversible medical procedures. It includes a provision to permanently ban the Department of Defense from providing minors with medical treatments for gender dysphoria, such as hormone therapies and puberty blockers that can result in sterilization. Children should have the chance to grow up without being subjected to experimental procedures that can cause permanent damage to their bodies and futures. These are minors we're talking about here. And what business is it of the Department of Defense to be engaging in this? These treatments are life-altering and their long-term effects are still unknown. The federal government has no business funding or endorsing such practices, particularly when they involve children. This provision ensures taxpayer dollars aren't used to promote controversial and harmful treatments for minors. Including this ban in the NDAA reflects a commitment to common sense and the protection of our nation's youth and focuses the defense on defending the homeland. It's a step in the right direction for safeguarding the futures for these children. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate yet another bipartisan win for the city of Houston this week. Within the Water bill the House passed yesterday, there were several important priorities that Congresswoman Fletcher and I spearheaded to ensure not another catastrophic flooding event like Hurricane Harvey ever happens again. Specifically, the Army Corps of Engineers is now statutorily required to finish one of the most important studies facing Texas, the Buffalo Bayou Tributaries Resiliency Study. Without the completion of this study, construction of a tunnel underneath our city will never be built to route floodwater away from my friends and neighbors in TX38 and TX7 and back into the Gulf of Mexico. I'd like to personally thank Congresswoman Fletcher and the brilliant staff in the Water Resources and Environmental Subcommittee for all their hard work to ensure Houstonians can remain resilient in the face of another disaster. I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the first ever Energy and Commerce Committee Chairwoman and my friend, Kathy McMorris Rogers, for her excellent work in leading the most bipartisan committee in Congress. Under her leadership, the committee has worked effectively, efficiently, and in a bipartisan manner to advance legislation that will improve the life of all Americans. Chair Rogers introduced bipartisan legislation that would provide necessary resources for Down syndrome research. She has also led us in combating the Biden administration's damaging overregulation and war on American energy. I was proud to work with her on the ADVANCE Act to enhance our civil nuclear leadership, which is now law. She also held insightful hearings on TikTok and the threat that it poses to our youth and our national security. Her time as the chair will enhance the United States and its citizens, and we will surely miss her. We surely wish her well in her retirement. Thank you, Kathy, for all your work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I request permission to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate the leadership of my dear friend, Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers. Serving alongside Kathy has been an honor. She is not only a fierce advocate for her constituents, but a principled leader with a servant heart. As the first chairwoman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Kathy has shown what it means to always put the needs of the American people first. But beyond her professional accomplishments, Kathy's faith is what I admire most. Whether it is by sharing an encouraging comment or during prayer walks around the Capitol, Kathy has strived to honor the Lord every day. After I was elected to Congress, I had the opportunity to meet with Kathy, who at the time was chairwoman of the Republican Conference Committee. It was during that meeting that Kathy made me feel like I belonged here. Kathy McMorris Rogers is special. During my time serving in Congress, Kathy has become a great friend and a great example of what it means to lead with grace and faith. Even though we will miss her here, I'm excited for what the Lord has in store for her. May God bless her and may He continue to guide her steps in this next season of life. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to recognize Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers, who is retiring at the end of the 118th Congress. In 2004, the two of us came to the House in the same class, and we've been friends throughout our time here. Kathy has the distinction of being the first woman to give birth 3 times while in the House. She's a visible and vocal leader within the disabilities community, and her advocacy is inspired by her son, Cole, who was born with Down syndrome. I thank the gentlewoman for her years of service to this great institution, to her constituents in Washington's 5th Congressional District, and to the American people. May God continue to bless her, her husband, Brian, and Cole, Grace, and Bryn, their 3 children, as she enters a well-deserved retirement. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 60 seconds and revise.
Without objection? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, for those of us from the Valley of the Sun, the Phoenix, Arizona area, there's an excitement around us. Our college team, Arizona State University, that was predicted to be last in its first year in the Big 12, has made the college playoffs. Matter of fact, they won the Big 12, and guess what? They get a bye in their first playoff game. but the community, the excitement, the joy, having one of the youngest coaches in America. I can only be thankful to the team. Being predicted to be last and coming out where they are, you've provided hope, joy, and excitement to our community. Thank you, Arizona State University football.
Good job. Go Sun Devils.
Okay.
You got anything, Jeff? Good.
Under the Speaker's announcement policy, January 9th, 2023, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the topic of this special order.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the House passed the Service Member Quality of Life Improvement and National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025, otherwise known as the fiscal year 25 NDAA. The fiscal year 25 NDAA will improve the quality of life for every service member and who serves our great country. It restores the focus of our military on lethality, not woke ideology. It improves the military's ability to recruit and train our fighting forces to be able to deter China and our other adversaries. It also increases oversight and requires accountability of the Biden administration and the Department of Defense. All of these tremendous accomplishments are why we are here tonight, Mr. Speaker. To speak in support of this recently passed bill that will make our military great again, I'm grateful for the members who've joined me this evening to discuss this important bill to protect our country and restore our national security. With that, I am pleased to yield to the gentleman from the state of Missouri, Representative Alford, for as much time as he may consume.
Well, thank you to my good friend, Mr. Rose. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my unwavering support for the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act. We must ensure our nation's military remains the greatest force for freedom and stability the world has ever known. And this year's NDAA does just that. At this very moment, our nation faces numerous threats, from the growing aggression from China and Russia to the persistent menace of terrorism. It is imperative that we ensure our military is provided the resources and support they need to defend our interests and keep Americans secure. The fiscal year 25 NDAA authorizes $895 billion in defense spending to support our military's critical missions, enabling us to modernize our nation's capabilities, from upgrading our naval and air power to investing in cutting-edge technologies. We will remain superior against our adversaries. Missouri's 4th Congressional District will receive major wins in this legislation, wins that we have fought hard for on the Armed Services Committee. Whiteman Air Force Base in Fort Leonard Wood will receive a combined total of $139.5 million for fueling facilities and advanced individual training barracks. There will be expanded access to child care in Missouri's families, military families, and to the programs that help military spouses attain and retain employment. And we are ecstatic to announce a 14.5% pay raise for junior enlisted service members and a 4.5% pay raise for all other service members. But this legislation isn't just about numbers. It's about the values that we hold dear as Americans. It's about our commitment to freedom, to justice, and the protection of our citizens. Mr. Speaker, this year's NDAA embodies our unwavering commitment to America's military excellence, reflecting the values that have always made our nation strong. We're prioritizing the well-being of our military families, bolstering the readiness of our armed forces, and fortifying our national security. But to truly restore our military's lethal edge, we have to purge the radical, woke ideologies that are being forced on our servicemen and women infiltrating our ranks. These divisive concepts have plagued our military, undermined our elite cohesion and combat effectiveness. And that is why this year's NDAA will take bold action. Number one, banning life-altering transgender medical treatments for minors, prohibiting the toxic spread of critical race theory, dismantling the bloated DEI bureaucracy, blocking a misguided military Green New Deal, and countering anti-Semitism. By eliminating these destructive influences, we are reclaiming our military's focus on its core mission, defending Americans and their interests. Mr. Speaker, as you saw today, this is not a bipartisan bill. This is an American bill. We are not just funding the military, we are improving the lives of those who protect us every day. And by passing the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act, we have sent a clear message to our adversaries. America will not be intimidated. America will always reign as the greatest nation on earth. I have one more. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of an extraordinary man, Dr. Gene Richardson, a mentor, a friend of mine, and someone who is really like a second father to me, a man who had one of the biggest impacts on my life, and one of the reasons I'm standing here today in this very hall. Dr. Richardson was a man of remarkable character and compassion. Born in Kennett, down in the Boot Hill of Missouri, he embodied the values of hard work, faith, and service from a very young age. Growing up as the youngest of 5 children, Dr. Gene's life was shaped by his parents, Earl, a Baptist pastor, and his mother, Pearl, who was a dedicated homemaker. Gene excelled in both academics and athletics, all while running his own newspaper franchise. And after earning his bachelor's in biology and graduating from Baylor College of Medicine, Dr. Richardson embarked on a journey that would impact countless lives. At just 26, he established a family practice down in Sanderson, Texas, becoming the sole doctor for an entire rural county. And when his calling led him to radiology, he brought innovation to that field, co-founding a mobile nuclear medicine company that brought advanced care to underserved hospitals across the country. But Mr. Speaker, Dr. Gene's service didn't stop at our borders. He founded the Ultrasound Fund for Latin America, providing equipment and training to small hospitals in Mexico. And he was very proud that he learned Spanish during that. He later joined medical missions to Guatemala, walking miles through remote areas to deliver life-saving care. His legacy of compassion crossed continents, touching lives in profound ways. Beyond his professional achievements, Gene was a man of deep faith and unshakable love for his family. Married to his beloved Mary for 65 years, he often reflected on their life together, saying, "I could not have chosen a more perfect helpmate." Together, they raised 2 wonderful children, Gene Jr. and Kay, and cherished their 3 grandchildren. Gene's passion for a life extended to music, travel, and education. He played trumpet in the Baylor Marching Band and added his rich bass voice to choirs and quartets well into his 90s. He was a good singer. He taught line dancing and jitterbug with youthful enthusiasm, and as a lifelong learner, he traveled the world discovering new cultures and inspiring others to do the same. In one of his final messages to his family, Gene reminded us of life's greatest gifts, faith, family, and friends. And he said, "God has given us grace and mercy. Let us use these gifts to enrich our relationships and to serve others." Dr. Richardson's life was a testament to just that, Mr. Speaker, the power of service, of faith, and love. And he leaves behind not only his beloved wife, Mary, and their family, but also a legacy that will inspire generations. And so, Mr. Speaker, is with both joy and gratitude that I honor the life of this extraordinary man, and may we all strive to live as Dr. Jean did, with generosity, with courage, and a heart full of adventure. Dr. Jean, we'll see you in the morning. I yield back.
I want to thank the gentleman from Missouri for that heartfelt tribute and for his important remarks concerning the issue regarding the National Defense Authorization Act. It's now my privilege to yield to the gentleman from the state of California, Representative LaMalfa, as much time as he may consume.
Well, I appreciate my friend from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, in leading this effort tonight, and for all of his great work on our messaging that we are doing as a Republican conference, to illustrate to the people of the country what it is we are trying to do, and that it's our belief that it'll be good for America, and in this case with the NDAA, good for our military and the people that populate it. This NDAA, the point I want to make this round is that the NDAA puts real muscle behind countering China's aggression with $15.6 billion for the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, which is about $5.7 billion more than what the Biden administration thought was going to be adequate. We're covering gaps the administration ignored, funding $490 million towards critical Indo-Pacific command priorities to shore up the operations and capabilities in the region. Making it clear, Taiwan won't have to stand alone. This bill launches the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative to send lethal aid where it's needed most. Joint training and trauma care programs will boost their readiness, while industrial base agreements make sure their defense capabilities and ours are solid. The U.S. is doubling down on its commitments to allies in this region. This isn't just talk. We're reaffirming congressional support with action. With so much aggression by China in the region and around the world, this is the least we should be doing for an ally such as Taiwan, who is there for us when we need them. We're also demanding a deep dive into the troubling alliance between China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea. These actors who are teaming up to challenge us in that region in the Pacific, as well as the mayhem they're causing with their alliances in the Middle East and our issues with trying to help protect Israel, whether it's going to be with Iran's efforts immediately or with whatever's going to happen in Syria now with Assad taken out. This bill gives counterintelligence agents more tools to expose and crush Chinese Communist Party spies working to undermine us in any of these regions. No more contracts with Chinese Communist Party affiliated contractors, labs, or universities. We're shutting down their access to our defense programs. Now, why we haven't do that now instead of that should have been our policy years ago, I'm not sure, but it's just common sense. You don't want to have China's access towards our technology and their ability to have some kind of weight in how our defensive programs work. It bans Departments of Defense from buying Chinese tech like semiconductors and communications gear. Relying on China for anything critical is asking for trouble, as who knows how easy it might be for them to embed spy technology into some of these chips, into some of this other equipment that could send information that is critical to us out to a different source that they can then mine and use against us. From ship repairs to logistics hubs, this bill ramps up our ability to operate in the Indo-Pacific. We're even funding forward deploying manufacturing, because if China wants a fight, we'll make sure they have one ready for them on day one. Now, nobody really wants to have a fight. Indeed, readiness and projecting strength is one of the best deterrents. So the work we can do in the NDAA, whether it's in this Pacific Deterrence Initiative and the other related pieces, or overall, it helps prevent war, it helps prevent conflict when the United States brings confidence to its allies around the world and maybe just a little bit of fear to its enemies. That's what we hope to accomplish and continue building on the rest of this year and on through the Trump administration. So with that, I thank my colleague, from Tennessee. Appreciate it, and I'll yield back to him.
I want to thank the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, for sharing his thoughts on these important issues tonight. I appreciate his remarks. Mr. Speaker, I will close by reiterating our support of our service men and women who defend our great country. Many of us have highlighted the improvement in the quality of life they will receive from the passage of this bill and it being signed into law by the President. However, I'd like to take a moment to highlight the impact it will have on Tennesseans serving in the armed services. According to the House Armed Services Committee, this bill will provide a 14.5% pay raise for junior enlisted service members and an average 4.5% pay raise for Tennessee's 19,500 service members. It also expands the program to help Tennessee's 1,500 military spouses attain and retain employment. Lastly, it expands access to child care for the 2,800 children of military families in Tennessee. These important provisions to increase service members' pay, expand child care services, and bolster efforts to assist military spouses are much needed and well-deserved. Service members' families sacrifice a lot so that their loved ones can keep us safe. I'm proud to support these provisions and am glad that they have been included in the final passage of the NDAA. When Americans elected President Donald Trump to serve as the 47th President of the United States, they sent a clear message. We must deter our adversaries, eliminate our enemies, protect the homeland, and support our troops. That is exactly what this National Defense Authorization Act seeks to do. We are proud to see it passed and encourage the Senate to join us in passing this important legislation so that it can be sent to the President's desk to be signed into law. Thank you to everyone who has joined me this evening. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Good, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to express my deep appreciation to the people of Virginia's 5th District for the privilege of representing them these past 4 years. Being their congressman has been the greatest honor of my professional life. When I answered the call 5 years ago to run for Congress, I identified as a biblical and a constitutional conservative. I wanted the voters and my future constituents to know how I would make decisions, how I would represent them, and how I would vote on their behalf in Washington. I wanted them to know that my values and principles come from my Christian faith and my biblical worldview. I wanted them to know that my guiding political philosophy comes from the Constitution and its stated limits on federal power. My allegiance as a congressman has been to my Creator, my Savior, the Constitution, the promises I made to my constituents, and to doing what I know is right, regardless of the cost. My main priorities have been to cut spending, to shrink the federal government, to fight for America First border and immigration policies, and to protect our constitutional freedoms. And as my time serving in this body on behalf of the citizens of the Virginia's 5th District comes to a close, I leave with no regrets because I've done as I told them I would do when I asked them to trust me with their vote and their support. My ultimate desire, however, has been to please the Lord, being more concerned about offending Him by what I don't say than I am about offending others by what I do say. I didn't run for Congress promising to bring the money back home, to deliver the earmarks, or the pork projects. I didn't run promising to work across the aisle, to compromise or find common ground, or to get things done. In fact, most of what we do here in Washington is bad, certainly unconstitutional, unjustified, and often downright harmful. Not to mention, we don't have the money. So the less we do, the better. In fact, we should be proud of the accusation that over the past 2 years, this Congress has done less than most Congresses. As Republicans, what should we have done more of that Biden and Schumer would agree to do? When I first ran for Congress in 2020, I presumed I would have the opportunity to serve with President Trump, help him build on the successes of his first term, and help him enact his second-term agenda. Unfortunately, that has not been the case, and like most Republicans, my efforts have been, by extreme necessity, directed at fighting the Democrat agenda, which has caused so much pain and suffering for the American people these past 4 years. Because when Democrats seize power, they wield it without apology and ram through the radical agenda, as they did in the first 2 years of the Biden administration with a narrow House majority and far less than 60 votes in the Senate. It's always about the money in Washington, and Democrats spent it lavishly and recklessly in 2021 and 2022 on their trillions for their ill-conceived and harmful COVID response, their Inflation Increase Act, their phony infrastructure bill, their radical climate agenda, all the while infusing every policy, department, and agency with their extreme pro-abortion, pro-transgender, pro-DEI and CRT, and climate objectives. You see, Democrats are willing to lose elections to push and pull the nation to the left, understanding that Republicans don't have the same political courage or willingness to risk their own elective futures to undo the harm, overturn the policies, or defund the programs. Thankfully, however, the American people responded to the extreme Democrat agenda by entrusting Republicans with the House majority 2 years ago in the 2022 midterms. But unfortunately, this Republican House majority has been squandered by a lack of courage, a lack of principle, a lack of steely resolve by Republican leadership and too many Republican members these past 2 years. Again, it's all about the money, and House Republicans could have blocked, could have stopped, and defunded anything and everything that we wanted these past 2 years. We could have just turned off the spigot and refused to give them the money. Instead, we have funded and perpetuated the Biden, Pelosi, Schumer policies and spending levels that we inherited and campaigned against that are bankrupting and destroying the country. The Constitution entrusts the House to manage the nation's finances, the nation's debt, and the nation's credit, and our ability to borrow money if and when necessary, and to make the payments on that debt. However, our national debt has grown by some $5 trillion in the 2 years that Republicans have controlled the purse strings. We are failing miserably. Every dollar we vote on is borrowed. Every dollar borrowed and spent steals from Americans through higher taxes, more inflation, and/or a greater debt burden for our kids and our grandkids. House Republicans, over the past 2 years, have given more money to Mayorkas for the border invasion. Matter of fact, back in the spring, we gave them $3 billion more to bring more illegals in more quickly. We have given more money to AG Garland, Attorney General Garland, FBI Director Wray, to abuse their power and weaponize federal law enforcement against their political opponents. House Republicans have continued funding Democrats' radical climate extremism, their pro-abortion agenda, their pro-LGBTQ policies, and their racist DEI CRT agenda. Why has our party leadership been more afraid to do nothing than to do something bad? As the medical folks like to say, first, do no harm. However, with predominantly Democrat votes, typically 90 to even 100% of Democrat votes, in a chamber with the Republican majority, our report card shows that since electing our current speaker 14 months ago, we have failed to cut $1 of spending, but have instead continued a $200 billion monthly deficit. We have passed 4 CRs, or continuing resolutions, and 2 minibuses maintaining Democrat policies and spending levels from the Biden-Pelosi-Schumer regime when they had full control. We reduced our majority by kicking out George Santos, who had a solid conservative voting record and had not been convicted of any crime. We passed an NDAA maintaining abortion funding, LGBTQ policies, climate priorities, DEI policies, CRT training. We reauthorized FISA twice without a warrant amendment, prohibiting illegal and unconstitutional surveillance of U.S. citizens without their knowledge, due process, or probable cause. We have borrowed and funded tens of billions of dollars for Ukraine and even Hamas. We borrowed and funded thousands of earmarks for tens of billions of dollars more to provide members with political cover back home for the bad votes they take here. We passed a tax bill that gave more benefits to illegal aliens. We failed to use any leverage that we had with the House majority to secure our borders. And just last month, we increased mandatory, or really automatic, spending by $200 billion more. And all of this has been done over the past 14 months with significantly more Democrat than Republican votes when we have the House majority. What if we had instead shocked the American people and summoned the courage and the resolve to just say, heck no, not on our watch, and walk away and refuse to fund the very destruction of the country that we campaign against? What if we had told Biden and Schumer, you ain't getting the money unless you cut some spending and reverse some of these harmful, dangerous policies? Instead, we are today contemplating borrowing $115 billion more for a disaster supplemental. That's what we're calling it anyway, on top of other inevitable year-end lame duck spending increases. Setting aside the unconstitutional lack of constitutional justification for the federal government being in the disaster relief or insurance business anyway, and why we would force middle America to fund relief for the coastal elites in these high-cost areas, setting aside the constitutionality or lack thereof of doing that, why would we even think about borrowing and giving one more dollar to the Biden administration in the remaining weeks of their regime? Why would we give the politicized and weaponized FEMA any more money before the end of this year? On November 5, the American people, thankfully, rejected the radical Democrat policies under which they have suffered these past 4 years. And it wasn't a question of the Democrat presidential candidate or the messaging or voter turnout. The fact is, Americans don't want the extreme Democrat agenda. They've had enough. The only alternative was the Republicans. Thankfully, at least for us politically, Democrats still don't grasp that. But we must not squander this reprieve, this tremendous opportunity that we were given by the American people on November 5. Americans desperately need our help. They desperately need us to rise to the occasion and to meet the moment. It can't be business as usual or how it's been for the past few decades. The American people are counting on us. They must count on us. There's no plan B. It's on this body. We're in the position that Democrats were in 4 years ago. After the 2020 election, they were in control of the White House with a narrow House and Senate majority. We're in the same position. As you know, Mr. Speaker, we talk a lot today, and we hear a lot of talk today about unity in our party. But unity for what purpose? Just to have the majority so we can be in the majority, so we can stay in the majority? Is that the purpose? Unity is impossible without a unifying mission. What is ours? The Democrats are clearly united in their agenda, the direction they want to take the country, and they will risk anything and everything to advance that. But why do we want the majority? Why do we want to have power? For what purpose? What are our non-negotiables to keep that power? What, if anything, are we not willing to give up or to surrender in the name of obtaining or retaining power? I've often told the Republican conference that we will never change Washington or save our country until it becomes more important to us to leave here having made a difference than it is to see how long we can stay. But for far too many, the primary goal is to be here, to stay here as long as we can, even to die here of natural causes, it seems. And everything else is subordinate to that objective. But we cannot be unified if we're willing to fund the very things we claim to oppose, because some in our party believe it will help them to get elected. Our party cannot be the goal or the objective unto itself, and our purpose cannot simply be to win elections to have the majority. What are our sacred principles, our values, our convictions that cannot and must not be surrendered in order to obtain or retain power? I ask you, Mr. Speaker, are there any? For what, if anything, are we willing to risk losing power to fight for? Is there any issue that transcends politics and elections for us? What is our foundation upon which everything else rests? Many in our country, many people across the country will express their knowledge of the First Amendment, which, as my friend from Chip Roy from Texas has stated, we should have stopped, Congress should have stopped, the founders should have stopped with, Congress shall make no law, and just stopped right there. Again, less is more. But whenever you ask somebody what the First Amendment protects, or what is the first right protected in the Constitution, they will invariably say freedom of speech. I've almost never had anyone answer that question any differently. When you ask them what the First Amendment protects, or the first right protected in the Constitution, they'll say freedom of speech. But of course, that's incorrect. The first right specifically protected in the Constitution, the first one enumerated in the Bill of Rights, intended to protect the people from an oppressive federal government, is the freedom of religion. The founders knew that the most basic, most fundamental, most precious of rights is the freedom to worship or not to worship, the freedom to practice or not to practice our faith as we choose. You cannot separate America from our founding Judeo-Christian principles and our recognition of our supernatural Creator, by whom and for whom we have our existence, our lives, our breath, and our very being. It is He, as our founding declaration expresses, who has endowed us with the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But how can a party continue to call itself conservative if it no longer fights for absolute truth and natural law flowing from our Creator? How can a party call it conservative if it no longer protects innocent, precious life in the womb, or looks the other way at the #1 cause of death in this country, abortion, and funds it in policy, as some just voted to do today with the latest NDAA? How can a party call itself conservative if it no longer fights for biblical morality, the traditional family, or the definition of marriage? In fact, I've said many times, almost everything that plagues our society and our country is a failure to follow God's design for morality, marriage, and the family. How can a party call itself conservative if it no longer fights for a common sense, scientific definition of sex and gender and funds the LGBTQ agenda, as we've been doing for the past 4 years? How can a party call itself conservative if it no longer fights for the true equality of all and instead tolerates DEI and CRT racist policies that we're funding? How can a party call itself conservative if it no longer fights for individual freedom, personal responsibility, and self-reliance? If it no longer places a premium on work or believes that people